Hello and welcome to today's webinar titled ThreadFix 2.2 Preview. My name is Nan Palmero and I'll be your moderator today. Throughout our presentation, we encourage you to interact with our speaker by typing in questions and comments using the questions pane. We will be answering your questions live following the presentation. Also, we are recording today's session and will make the recording available soon following the event. Now on to today's speaker. A globally recognized application security expert, Dan Cornell holds over 15 years of experience architecting, developing, and securing web-based software systems. As Chief Technology Officer and Principal at Denham Group, he leads the technology team to help Fortune 500 companies and government organizations integrate security throughout the development process. And now, Dan will present on the topic, ThreadFix 2.2 Preview.
Thanks, Nan. Howdy, everyone. Thanks for taking the time this morning, this afternoon, kind of depending geographically where folks are, but thanks for taking the time to sit with us today. The goal behind today's presentation, we're going to go through for the ThreadFix 2.2 development series that we're just finishing up. We're going to go and look at a high level what ThreadFix in general does, just to refresh or for folks that may not have as much experience with ThreadFix, but we're really going to spend the bulk of the time looking at, in this 2.2 release, what new features and capabilities that we've added, and talk a little bit toward the end about next steps. The release candidate for ThreadFix 2.2 is available as of this morning from the download site. We'll make that link available for everyone. So please pull the release candidate down, take it for a spin, and love to hear anybody's feedback, thoughts, feature requests for future development, and so on. So without further ado, we'll get started here. I'm Dan Cornell. That's a picture of me that somehow I include in all of these presentation decks. And as Nan said, I'm the founder and one of the founders and the CTO here at Denham Group, and I'm a software developer by background. And that has led into a lot of the work that we're doing with ThreadFix, trying to take the, what are too often two different silos, the world of application security, or the people worrying about the security of applications, and the folks that are actually developing those applications. And so a big push of ours with ThreadFix is, how do we make these groups work better together, and how do we make the tools that these groups use work better together? And again, we'll be talking more about that. I do a lot of work with OWASP, and I'm one of the San Antonio chapter leaders as well. So a little bit of background on Denham Group. We're a secure software services and products company. We build applications that typically have some sort of security or privacy compliance requirements around them. We also help organizations build more secure software, where we go in, do assessments, do security code reviews, and help them build software development life cycles that include security at the appropriate places. We also do a lot of network and infrastructure security work. And the service work that we've done in these areas, most specifically the application development and application security work, also really fed into the types of things that we have built ThreadFix to do. We use ThreadFix internally for the development that we do, and I'm in the process of writing up a series of blog posts looking at how we've implemented ThreadFix in our organization. We'll send links to some of the early posts out, and you can keep an eye on our blog and see more of that stuff coming up. So what is ThreadFix? At a high level, ThreadFix is a software application. It's a web-based software platform that allows the teams responsible for application security to first create a consolidated view of all the applications that they're responsible for, as well as all of the vulnerabilities that they have detected in those applications that they've found. After creating this consolidated view, then ThreadFix allows them to prioritize application risk decisions based on data. And so by having all this data in a single place from all the different testing activities, all the different assurance activities, you can start to slice and dice this data to determine what are the vulnerabilities we need to be the most serious about, why, and what are the teams we need to work with in order to get these fixed. Finally, ThreadFix puts these teams in a position where they can translate these vulnerabilities, often found by security teams, but it helps them translate these vulnerabilities into the tools that developers are already using. And so the work that developers need to do to fix security vulnerabilities doesn't live separate from the other tasks that they're managing. Instead, the security vulnerabilities or the work associated with security lives right alongside new feature requests, non-security related bugs, performance issues, and all the other work items that development teams have. Again, this is a small list of a number of the technologies that we integrate with, and this is always evolving, and we'll talk more about that. So first, what are we looking to do with ThreadFix? We're looking to put teams in a position where they can create a consolidated view of the applications that they're responsible for, and to load in the results of all the different assurance activities that they're undertaking, whether that be static analysis, dynamic analysis, whether there's manual threat modeling, manual code reviews. The results of all of these different testing across all the different vendors or services or tools that you might be using can be loaded into one place. And so let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So logging into ThreadFix, we get a basic dashboard that shows us some trending information and lets us look at the applications that have the most and the most serious vulnerabilities. And then we've also got an application portfolio here where you can look across the different teams you have in your organization. What are the different applications that each of these teams are responsible for? And you can go in and look at all the currently open vulnerabilities. So as you load scans in, either from manual testing, or in this case, we've got stuff from Arachni, Burp Suite, and IBM Rational App Scan, you load all of that data in, and ThreadFix keeps track of this data and tracks it over time. So as vulnerabilities appear on scans, as vulnerabilities are remediated and no longer show up in scans, ThreadFix tracks those diffs so that you can capture things like trending information. And it lets you drill into these specific vulnerabilities to identify. Here, for example, we see one cross-site scripting vulnerability that was identified by AppScan, Arachni, and Burp Suite. And so instead of, as security analysts, having to take PDF reports that get dumped out by these different tools and try to line these results up manually, we see it done a lot of times in Excel, and then emailing those Excel spreadsheets or those PDFs over to development teams, that's a horrible use of time. Instead of doing that, ThreadFix helps you to clear up all this data, load it all into one place, have the data get cleaned up, normalized, and deduplicated. Some interesting new things that we've done with ThreadFix 2.2 is we've expanded the types of tools that we support. So for organizations that are starting to roll out interactive application security testing, we now have support for contrast security. Also organizations that are rolling out software composition analysis or known vulnerable component analysis, we also now support Sonatype in addition to the open source dependency check. And this technology, or the ability to import these results, now they can live alongside of other testing that you might be doing using, for example, dynamic scanners like an app scan, static scanners like a Fortify. All of this data can get loaded into one place so that you have one single console that you can look at in order to track the current vulnerabilities that you have open in your environment. So here we can go in and look and see results that we've pulled in from Sonatype. They live alongside the results that we've found from other types of testing. And so you don't have to have one system that manages your dynamic scanning program, another system that manages your static program, and another system that is tracking what you're doing with component analysis. All of that data rolls up into one, into one single console. In addition, we are expanding the support that we have for hybrid analysis mapping to include, at this time, the interactive application security testing, so that you can look at these results and have them merge together. And what hybrid analysis mapping is, it's a technology that we've developed on a contract with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate that allows you initially to merge the results of static scanning and dynamic scanning. So you can take a static scan, for example, with a Fortify, a dynamic scan from, for example, an app scan, and you can merge those results together. Just to see, kind of really quickly what that looks like. You can look here and see where we've identified vulnerabilities that were found both by Fortify on the static side, AppScan on the dynamic side, and ThreadFix is smart enough to look at this data and roll it up and say, this actually represents the same vulnerability, but I have the request information about how the vulnerability was identified dynamically, and that lives alongside the static information of the control or data flow inside of the application while it's executing. And so again, great time saver, so that as security analysts, you don't have to spend time, manually looking to put those results together. Instead, that all happens in the background. We've already got support added to our hybrid analysis mapping where we can merge dynamic scanning results with the interactive scanning results from the contrast folks. So we can go in here and say, show me the vulnerabilities that were found both by AppScan and by contrast. And again, we pull the data from contrast, you load in the results from AppScan, and ThreadFix automatically merges these results together. In addition, with the 2.2 release, we've added support for some new platforms. The initial support for hybrid analysis mapping was centered around Java applications written both using JSP as the presentation framework as well as the Spring framework. We've added additional support for Java applications written using the Struts framework, and we've also added support for ASP.NET applications, both web forms and for MVC. And going forward, we're going to be adding additional going forward, we're going to be looking at adding support for additional languages and frameworks. If you've got a particular one that you're interested in, please feel free to shoot us an email or file a link shoot in GitHub. In addition, ThreadFix now allows organizations to tag applications, and that's from a technical standpoint, that's a pretty straightforward feature, but it was one that a lot of organizations really were pushing us to adopt. And the reason that we think the tagging is so important is that allows for a much more flexible management of the application portfolio. At the current time, before, you could only organize applications by teams. And that makes sense, but that model starts to break down, especially from a data management standpoint for organizations that have hundreds or even thousands of applications. What the application tagging allows you to do is go in and manage different tags. And so say you want to create tags for all of your applications that are subject to PCI compliance, or all of your applications that are managing data that is relevant to HIPAA. You can create tags and go through and tag the appropriate applications. In addition, let's say that you want to tag applications, all of your applications that are external facing, that are internet attached, as well as tag applications that may be internal facing or partner facing. You could also go in and tag all your applications that are written in Java, all of your applications that are written in .NET. And so this allows you much greater flexibility in managing your application portfolio and determining different views you want to have of the applications. And so, here's an example of this application that has both, is subject both to PCI and as well as the one that is in, is in production. And from this we can see, again, in the current environment, we've only got one application that's subject to PCI because this is test data. And as we'll see, the ability to slice and dice based on tags is also now available with ThreadFix's updated reporting. So now that we've loaded in the results of all this different testing that we've done, static analysis, dynamic analysis, manual testing, interactive security testing, or IAST, as well as the software composition analysis, we've loaded all this data in, we've normalized it, deduped it, it's been run through hybrid analysis mapping, giving us one view of all the vulnerabilities that exist for all the applications in your portfolio. Now you want to be able to prioritize and make decisions about what steps that you take next. One of the big things that we started in the 2.1 release that we've finished, or at least for now we've finished in the 2.2 release, is completely overhauled the reporting framework and allowed for a much greater customization than was previously available. From a technical standpoint, we shifted to using the D3.js framework. Again, the underlying technology is kind of maybe not necessarily super important to folks, but as everyone who's seen this agrees, these reports certainly look much nicer than the ones that I had designed originally. I think the colors are a lot nicer, but they're also a lot more flexible. And so, again, you still have the ability to go in and do trending, but we could go in and say, I only want to look at critical, high, and medium vulnerabilities. And so you can start to slice and dice this data in different ways and to save those filters. And we'll look more at this in just a little bit. Again, you can also look at a snapshot at a point in time, what are the currently open vulnerabilities, but also drill in for more specifics. The vulnerability progress report has been reworked in the new version, and again, folks that have talked to me about this know that this is one of my favorite reports, because what this lets you do is it lets you go and see not just the prevalence of certain vulnerabilities that show up, but it also lets you track your progress in dealing with vulnerabilities. And so you can see, again, here in our test data, we see we have a lot of configuration vulnerabilities. We've only fixed 1% of those. The average age of the vulnerabilities we've identified for that is 46 days, and our average time to close is 212 days. What this lets you do as an organization running your software security program is to start to benchmark what you all are doing against the public data that we're starting to see released from the folks like Veracode and White Hat. And so if you're familiar with their reports, if you're not familiar with those reports, you certainly should be. Both great sources of data about the incidence rates and the remediation rates for different vulnerabilities. What this report lets you do is it lets you track what is the mean time to fix in our organization for certain classes of vulnerabilities. And I think that's a really important metric to be tracking. In an ideal world, we wouldn't be introducing vulnerabilities new, and obviously that's something that you want to pay attention to. But especially for organizations that are just starting to get their programs underway, it's important to be able to see what is the amount of time that it takes for me to fix something once we've found it, or what is our exposure window once we've identified a vulnerability. And again, having this report about your program across the different vendors or technologies that you're using, this puts you in a situation to benchmark yourself against those public data sets. And so how we see this used is an organization would say, hey, similar organizations in our industry and our size, in 50 days they're fixing 80% of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, right? It's taking us 75 days, and we're only fixing 60%. We need to devote more budget to remediation, otherwise we run the risk of falling out of step with our peers. Or you might also say, look, our peers in the industry, it's taking them 50 days to do an 80% remediation or close rate. In 25 days, we're fixing 100%. Clearly, I deserve a bonus for my effective use of scarce resources. However you want the statistics to lie, the benefit of loading all of this data through one central console is the statistics get calculated automatically for you. And that's a very powerful way to be able to look at your program across what you're doing in dynamic analysis, across what you're doing in static analysis, across what you're doing in interactive analysis, manual testing, so on and so forth. This lets you roll this all up into one place, because really, in most organizations we talk to, they don't care if they find a SQL injection via a manual pen test or a static analysis scan or a dynamic analysis scan. They just need to fix the vulnerability. And so this allows you to start to report and to speak in a much more quantitative way about your software security program. In addition, we've added some reporting based on the OWASP top 10. That's something that a lot of organizations use that as a yardstick, and so you can go in here and again let's find all our injection flaws, SQL injection, command injection, so on and so forth. And it lets you drill into this data and to determine, again, show me this report only for a certain team or only for a certain set of applications, and show me which scanning technology found these different vulnerabilities. You've also got the portfolio report. This report allows you to go in and see across our portfolio, when was the last time that we performed testing? And for applications that you consider to be more important, are you doing testing more frequently? So again, we can drill in here and see, in our test data, we've got a critical application. It's only been looked at once, and that was over a year ago. And so looking at this report, I'd say, you know what, maybe I need to figure out for this critical application that this may need to be subject to more frequent scanning, because I've got other applications, all these medium applications that I've scanned within the last month or 3 months. Maybe I need to reprioritize my activities. Another report that we've newly released with the 2.2 version is our remediation report. And what that allows you to do is to take a starting date and an ending date and look at the progress that you've made over that time. Again, in this case, the data is going not the way that we'd want, in that we started out with a number, 2 critical vulnerabilities and ended up with 265. That's a trend that is probably going in a different direction. But what it also shows you is here's the currently open vulnerabilities, as well as all the vulnerabilities that have been closed during the intervening time. And so, if you need to be able to report it to management, this allows you to see over a specific period of time for a certain set of vulnerabilities, here's the headway that we are able to make. Also, and this was included in 2.1 and has some additional capabilities built in the 2.2 release. You can look at vulnerabilities across your entire organization, or drilling down however you like, and you can look at these vulnerabilities and start to ask questions of the data. So you may say, I only want to look at my Java-based applications. Right? Or I only want to look at vulnerabilities that were found by 2 or more scanners. Right? Maybe I consider those to be higher priority because I think they're less likely to be false positives. Maybe I think they're easier to find with automation. Again, or you could say, well, I want to drill in, and for these purposes, I only want to consider my critical and my high vulnerabilities. Right? Because those are the ones that I need to look at first. And as with all of these reports, with the 2.2 release, you can now save different filters. And so let's say your organization has a policy, for example, where you want to look at critical and high vulnerabilities over 30 days, right? You have a policy that says all critical and high vulnerabilities have to be addressed in 30 days. You can create a filter, save that, and then run this filter either in the user interface or via the REST API and pull out vulnerabilities that are critical and highs but that have aged more than 30 days. And so that's identifying for you, here are vulnerabilities that are out of line with the out of line with our policy. So, and with the redoing and adding of these new reports, again, the goal is, once you've loaded all this data in, how can you start to navigate this data to identify the vulnerabilities that you consider to be the most serious, right, or that you need to prioritize differently? And how do you speak in a much more quantitative way about your application security program? We've also added some new compliance-specific reporting for folks subject to PCI and HIPAA. And again, this is based off of some of the remediation reporting where you can track the vulnerabilities for applications that are subject. Again, you tag them for PCI and for HIPAA or for other compliance regimes. And what you can also do is go in and tag different comments that you've made. And so if you've identified a situation where you have vulnerabilities that were identified by scanners but where you have compensating controls, you can tag those comments and say, from a PCI standpoint, this vulnerability is going to remain open, but we believe we have a compensating control in place. This report lets you run this, so then when the auditors come through, you can say, here is how our vulnerability situation has changed over time, and for remaining open vulnerabilities, here's what here are the compensating controls, or here are the notes we have on those, so you can quickly drill in. The auditor can quickly drill into the information they need, and candidly, hopefully, leave you alone after that. In addition, we've always integrated via ThreadFix. We've allowed you to integrate with the tools development teams are using, defect trackers. With the 2.2 release, we've also now added support for sending data over to different GRC systems. And so as you load in, as the application security team, as you load in all of this data, get a consolidated view, you can translate vulnerabilities over to the defect tracking system that developers are using, but you can also collapse this data up and send it up to the GRC systems that your risk management teams are using. And so, the idea here is, rather than having separate systems that you're having to track, this data should flow through your application security team and then up to the risk management team, so that application and software level risks can take their seat at the table alongside the network and infrastructure scanning that you're probably doing, as well as other risk management activities. Just to see, just a brief view of what that looks like. Here we can go in and we can see that these particular cross-site scripting vulnerabilities have been sent up to the risk management system and and are being tracked. Just like we're also tracking here the software defect tracking system that these vulnerabilities have been sent over to. And so, again, rather than chasing after development teams to see if they've fixed vulnerabilities, ThreadFix updates the status on a periodic basis so that you can see as developers think that they've fixed things. In addition, with the GRC systems, you can also see as the status changes in the GRC systems so that you can see if a risk has been accepted or if something has been prioritized. And again, all of that comes back to the idea here where we want to track all the activities that we're doing for our application security program in a central place and then reach out to other groups in the tools that they're already using in order to get these things resolved. Finally, we want to be able to take this vulnerability data, which is the stuff that the security teams care about. We want to translate those into the systems that developers are already using. A big challenge that we've seen with application security in every organization that we work with, finding vulnerabilities is usually pretty easy. Getting them fixed is the real challenge because security folks have to often go into a different silo to the developers and say, hey, I know you guys have a bunch of features that you promised to a hotshot VP who promised them to an important customer. I know you guys have your performance issues that you're trying to track down. I know you guys have bugs that you're trying to work on, but we also need you to work on this security stuff because this exposes us to, we may be exposed to a breach because of this. So from a philosophical standpoint, what we want to do with ThreadFix is take as much friction out of the process as is possible, right? And so if you've got interactions where you run a scan, you generate a 300-page PDF with a color graph on the front and hand it to the development teams, that's pretty easy for the development teams to assume that, to marginalize that or to go up the chain and say, hey, the security guy, came and bothered me. Can you get this person off my back? And again, especially in situations where you have multiple scanning tools that are finding, often overlapping vulnerabilities, going to development teams with multiple PDFs is a surefire way to enlist the support of their management structure in avoiding working on the stuff that you'd like for them to be working on. So with ThreadFix, what we want to do is take these vulnerabilities and translate them over. In this case, we've translated over to a JIRA bug tracking system, where we can go and bundle these vulnerabilities together and ship them over to the defect tracking system, and then periodically check in on the status of those bugs that we've created to identify when the development team thinks that they've fixed them. So here what we're seeing is that this particular issue, the development team thinks that they've resolved it. I'm going to want to rerun a scan, this Arachni scan, for example, that found that vulnerability, and that vulnerability should drop off of our list of open vulnerabilities. If it doesn't, then I know I need to go and reach out to the development team and talk to them about how they're fixing cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. In the happy case, the vulnerability goes away, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. And so, again, the thinking here is let's maximize the time of all of the folks running the application security program so that they're only paying attention to the exceptional cases and they can focus their activities or their time on the higher value activities, mentoring development teams, doing manual testing, and other things of that nature. We've done a couple things, differently in the 2.2 release specifically. One thing I want to go in and show you is we have created a SonarQube plugin. For those of you familiar, former developers, current developers, or folks that work with development teams, SonarQube is basically a dashboard that is used by large numbers of software development teams to manage their technical debt. And so Sonar has plugins for different languages that will go in, look for potential problems, and they can also consume results from different quality tools. What we've done with the 2.2 release, we've created a SonarQube plugin for ThreadFix that allows you to send all of this data, all the data you're collecting from your application security program into this backlog tracking system that your development teams are probably using, so that it lives alongside all of the other work that they're tracking in those systems. And so from a software development management standpoint, we use Sonar internally for our development projects to keep track of the technical debt, not just security technical debt, but also quality technical debt. And so this allows you to go and configure. This allows you to configure for the different, for your different configurations for dev teams that are using Sonar. Again, this is the standard Sonar configuration stuff. What you can also do with ThreadFix now is point the point Sonar toward either a ThreadFix server or a local set of files, and to pull that data into Sonar. And so all the security testing that you're doing also gets pulled in and lives inside of the inside of Sonar for tracking by management. And again, we let you do this in two different ways. You can either pull it directly from the ThreadFix server, or you can pull it if you're doing security testing in your continuous integration. So at the end of your Jenkins run, you've got maybe the results of a Fortify scan and the results of a dependency check scan. You can either pull that data from a ThreadFix server, or to make things even easier to get up and running, you can just point the plugin, the ThreadFix Sonar plugin at those files. They get pulled in and shipped up into the Sonar server. In addition, we've embedded our hybrid analysis mapping technology in the plugin. And so if you're doing dynamic testing during your continuous integration, those results that you found from the dynamic scan, for example, from a ZAP scan or something like that, those results can be mapped back to the entry point source code file. And so that allows you to track this data on a per file basis inside of Sonar. So again, here we can go and drill into the pet store, look at the blocker issues we've identified, and we can actually track to the source code file here the different problems that we've identified in the source code. And using the hybrid analysis mapping, we've got this dynamic scan from AppScan maps back to that entry point visit controller and the specific line of code. And so, again, that's going to make your dynamic scanning even more valuable to developers, because you're able to pinpoint, you don't have the same level of, insight that you would have from a static scan where you're analyzing the code. But with the hybrid analysis mapping, we can map back to the file and the entry point where the developers need to go to track down and resolve this problem. In addition, with the ThreadFix 2.1, we released scanners, or actually I think it was with 2.0, we released scanner plugins for OWASP ZAP and for Portswigger's Burp Suite that use the hybrid analysis mapping technology for something a little bit different. What we can do with our hybrid analysis mapping technology that's relevant to scanners is we can pre-calculate the attack surface of an application. We basically use the hybrid analysis mapping technology to do a lightweight static analysis of the application source code. From that, we identify all of the URLs that the application will respond to, as well as the parameters that that application is going to pull. And so we can precede that into these scanners. And so if we go and look at ZAP, we've preceded the scan. We've identified here pages that we wouldn't have found in a normal crawl. This admin.jsp page you wouldn't find in a crawl. And also we've identified parameters that you might not find in a crawl. For example, this debug parameter. And so those parameters could indicate, potentially a malicious backdoor, potentially something that a developer put in there for convenience. But you can pull this data and precede the scan so that you can get better scan coverage when you run your dynamic scans. And with the 2.2 release, in the earlier release, you could pull the data from a ThreadFix server. In addition, we've now embedded the hybrid analysis mapping technology into the plugin itself, rather than just living on the server side. And so, if you're a pen tester and have access to source code, you can grab that data or you can point the scanner at the source code, and it will go and pre-populate this scan with the attack surface data. Grab the URL there. And so what that basically tells ZAP to do is, based on this base URL, calculate all the potential relative URLs and parameters from there and add that to your scan model before you start your crawl. And again, the goal here is to get better, have fewer false negatives because you have better coverage from the scanner. And the big thing that we've done for both the Burp and Zap plugins with the 2.2 release is now that technology is embedded in the plugin, making it a lot easier for web app pen testers to use on their own. Obviously we'd love to have you using the ThreadFix server and pulling data from it as a way to get started even easier for pen testers that have access to source code on their local workstation. They can load it up from there. In addition, in a Zap environment, you can also access the preceding behaviors via the Zap API. And so for teams that are doing a lot of automation around Zap, potentially using the API, we now expose methods, or we've added methods once you install the plugin. We've added methods to the API so that you can start to script these interactions, again, if you're using Zap in a continuous integration type environment. This is allowing for a lot of really interesting interactions and automation type things that where you can wire different tools together. In addition, and this is more of a convenience thing, but ThreadFix has a number of associated tools. We've looked at a couple of them today. We've now embedded all of those tools inside of the inside, so you can serve them from the ThreadFix server. This was a customer request from one of our long-term customers, and they said, we want to do more with the plugins, but it's kind of hard to get them and to make sure that the versions are up to date. And so now we have a tools download page where you can do things like download the Burp plugin and the Zap plugin, the Sonar plugin. In addition, ThreadFix exposes a REST API that allows for a lot of automation, and the command line interface is basically a small Java application that wraps that REST API and makes it easy to script different interactions with ThreadFix. And we've created a data migration tool to help organizations move data if they start out in the HSQL database that is not intended for production. You can, using this tool, you can migrate your instance to a more production-ready MySQL instance. And we've also seen a lot of organizations that are looking to import the results of manual testing. They either have these dumps as CSV files or in Excel spreadsheets that they're either producing internally themselves or that they're being handed by third-party pen testers. We created another command line tool that lets you load in these Excel spreadsheets or these CSV files and generate a file that you can import into ThreadFix. So what we've seen, over the years as people's deployments have gotten more advanced, we're seeing a lot more desire to integrate with different systems and a lot greater desire for automation. And so those are some of the things that we're pushing with these additional components. And again, with the 2.2 release, we try to make it easy to get all of these in the correct version, as well as links out to the online documentation, all from one central place. We get a lot of questions about ThreadFix. What's in the community edition? What's in the enterprise edition? What are the differences? Why would I want to upgrade? A lot of this technology is all available via the community edition. That's something that's been important to us. We want ThreadFix to be a great resource for the community, and we want people that, especially if they're getting their application security program off the ground, we want to put them in a position where they can start to look at their program in a much more quantitative way, look at it in a much more process-centric way. And so we hope ThreadFix is an excellent tool for organizations that are starting to do that. As organizations' implementations get more robust, as they get more data loaded into it, we found that they were coming to us and asking additional questions, and they needed some additional things, and that's why we rolled out ThreadFix Enterprise about a year ago at the RSA conference. So the big thing that you get with ThreadFix Enterprise is you get phone and email support. With ThreadFix, again, the open source community edition, we've got a Google group, we've got GitHub, you can submit issues, and we do try to support that community, obviously. But if you want to actually have someone to complain to and actually have someone whose job it is to fix your problem, that's what phone and email support associated with ThreadFix Enterprise is intended for. In addition, with some of the more compliance-centric reports that we've provided, those are available only in the Enterprise Edition. And what we also let you do in the Enterprise Edition from an additional feature standpoint is what we call scan orchestration. You can store scan templates, for example, from like an app scan or a burp or a zap. You can save those inside of ThreadFix and set a schedule by which you want those scans to be run, and then you wrap, with the ThreadFix scan agent, you can wrap those scanners on the on the workstations that have those scanners available. The scan agent calls home to ThreadFix and says, "Hi, I'm an app scan. Do you have any do you have any sites that you want me to scan right now?" And ThreadFix hands out the configuration. The scan gets run and pulls the data back in. In addition, ThreadFix Enterprise better supports the type of deployment infrastructure that we see in the larger enterprise deployments. For example, in ThreadFix Community, the users are all stored in a local database versus from an enterprise standpoint, you can authenticate to your organization's LDAP or Active Directory server. What we see is also really important in a lot of larger deployments is the ability to do role-based and database access control. In ThreadFix Community, all of the users are essentially administrators and peers, which works great if you have a 1 or 2 person team. In ThreadFix Enterprise, as you have a need or as your organization develops a need to better segment off users to say, this development team, I want to have certain capabilities and only to be able to see data from their applications versus this development team over here needs to have different capabilities but should only be able to see their applications. Those types of more advanced permission relationships are the types of things that you can do with ThreadFix Enterprise. Finally, we do a lot of service work supporting organizations with their with their deployments. We can do kickstarts where we come in, help get ThreadFix installed and configured, get an initial set of applications and data loaded in, so that when we leave, everything's up and running, and you know that you've got a good solid foundation. Because we have a largely open development model, we get contributions from the community, which is great. A number of folks you can see on the website that have helped out with that in the past. Or if your organization has a need for a particular feature, we can work with you to make sure that that feature makes it into the roadmap. Again, with ThreadFix, we can work with you to help get applications set up for scanning and to load, get more data loaded in, or to give you better coverage of your portfolio. Again, a lot of organizations have challenges getting full-time equivalents. There's no budget; they're hard to hire. We can help augment your team to get your ThreadFix deployment up and running and spread across your application portfolio. There's a couple important links, and again, the slides will be available, and we'll be sending everybody a follow-up email after this. And I think we've got a couple of questions that I'm seeing here. Let me scroll through, and we'll, one moment. Okay. There's one question about why the severity levels are different in some of the scan results. And let me see if I've got a good example of that. Sorry, we missed this when we went by the first time. And I think a good example of that might be something like this. Well, except for that one, all the severity levels are high. Sweet, high. Well, I think the question was around situations where the severity levels are different. The different scanners are going to rate things differently, and what ThreadFix, basically in the process of mapping, what ThreadFix does is it takes the scanner's version of how severe it is and tries to move that into its internal format. In ThreadFix right now, we use a critical, high, medium, low, and info level. What you see from other scanners, they have more or less information, and so to translate and normalize this data, we've got to take other scanners' findings and map them to our internal severity level, and so that's sometimes why you find one scanner has ranks something as one thing, another scanner ranks it as another. ThreadFix attempts to pull that in, and then ultimately makes a determination of what the severity level is. A question here: can the trending report be filtered by tags? It will be able to very shortly. That's one feature that did not quite make it into the release candidate. And so I arm wrestled the ThreadFix product manager, and that will be implemented here shortly before the final release. But all the reports should be filterable by tags. So good eye finding that. And I told the team when we looked up and realized that had been implemented, I told them that was the first thing that everyone was going to ask for once they looked over it in some detail. You've got a very quick eye, the person that identified that. So great work, and yes, by the final release it will be. Let's see, looking down here. Okay, questions about the severity level, talk about that. Okay, so two other questions. Can we talk a little bit more about the ThreadFix enterprise proxy support, right? So if your organization sits behind a proxy where you have outbound scans that are, sorry, outbound connections are required to go through a proxy, in ThreadFix Enterprise, we've got the capability where you can enter your proxy information and make those connections through your proxy via the ThreadFix user interface. So, for example, if you're pulling data in from Qualys or White Hat or Veracode or Contrast or any sort of a software as a service provider, but inside of your corporate network environment, you have to pass that through a proxy. ThreadFix Enterprise gives you the capability in the user interface to set up your proxy information, and then that proxy information is attached to that network connection so that things can just go out. Also have a question here about the scan orchestration, the ability to kick off the ZAP and burp scans. Like that right now, that scan orchestration across all the scanners, both the ZAP on the free side, burp on the less expensive, app scan on the slightly more expensive side. All of the scan orchestration right now is currently limited to the Enterprise Edition. That's right. You can load in scans from all the different scanners we support, ZAP, burp, AppScan, Fortified, so on and so forth. You can load in scans from anything into the Community Edition. The ability to go in and set scan policies, to store scan policies and set scan schedules across the different scanners is currently only available in the Enterprise. Let's see. Any more questions? Please feel free to submit via the chat here. What other? Okay, so GRC systems we supporting right now? We support ServiceNow's GRC system. Archer is the one that we've talked to folks about. That is kind of the one that the most folks are interested in, and so that's probably next on the list of support. If you are interested in getting your data from ThreadFix into a GRC system, again, reach out to us. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm just dan@denimgroup.com, or reach out via via contact, one of the ThreadFix contact forms or something like that. If you're interested in a different GRC system and possibly interested in working as a beta or early access site for that, let us know. We've also got a question here. What about scanners that map a vulnerability to more than one CWE? Again, in those cases, what we've typically had to do is to go through, look at the scan results, and make a determination of which CWE we think is most appropriate. And so the importer, the normalization process, will go through and make a determination. And so I know I've seen in the past results from like Fortify and things like that, where they say, well, here's a vulnerability, and this could kind of be this this CWE or this CWE. I believe that's Fortify, where I've seen those before. In those cases, we've had to go in and make a judgment call of this is the one that we think is the most this is the one that is the most appropriate. Let's see. Now we've got a question if you have a product and want to integrate. And so, yeah, for one of the things that we're also going to be doing going forward is talking a lot more specifically or formally about the relationships that we have with these different vendors. Again, we integrate with, I've even lost count, it's a large number of tools that we talk to, and we're always adding more. We have varying degrees of relationships with those vendors, and in most cases, pretty friendly relationships with those folks. That's something that we're going to be talking about more. If you're a vendor and you're interested in getting a product, getting support for our product, there's two ways to do that. The first or easiest way is, again, when we talk from a feature acceleration standpoint, If you have a particular integration that you would like to have connected for one particular customer, we can talk about adding support, and that could be a professional services engagement that we could work on with folks. The other easy way, or slightly harder way, but also a very effective way, is to have a lot of your customers say that they will become our customers if we add support for your product. We try to be very responsive to the community, the community as a whole, open source community users as well as the enterprise users. Again, the way that we prioritize features is, are we hearing this from our user community that we need to support tool XYZ? Hearing from users what they want to see is, we love to get that type of feedback from the community, and we prioritize that. Question about the checkmarks integration. We talk to the checkmarks guys frequently and have support for importing their data. And what we're looking to do, we're looking to transition. Right now, you have to import checkmark files one by one, which you can do via automation, using the command line client. You can use it, do it via the REST API. The model that we're moving to, because checkmarks is a server-based product, is to give you the ability to, basically point the checkmarks, point your application or point ThreadFix at the checkmark server and say, pull back all the applications I'm managing and checkmarks, map those to the applications that we have in ThreadFix, and pull this data every night. And that's the way that our integration works right now with like Veracode, with White Hat, with Qualys, as well as most of the other server-based products. And so we're moving that direction with checkmarks, and we are just there is one API call that they need to add to their API to allow us to build that type of an integration. They're aware of it, and I think they're working on it. That's the direction that we're going. And similarly, much as we respond to customer feedback about which integrations we should support, if you're a checkmarks customer, it couldn't hurt just to mention in a friendly way to them that if we had that additional API call, we could treat them as a remote provider. And I think that's going to make management of checkmarks results in ThreadFix a lot easier. We use checkmarks is one of the technologies we use in the testing of ThreadFix, and so I've got a blog post that will be coming out shortly looking at how we've implemented that. I don't want to get too deep into it now, but we basically use Jenkins for automation, and we've got a Jenkins job that pulls all the ThreadFix source code out, bundles it appropriate to the different applications that the chunks that need to get scanned together, and then we use the checkmarks command line to submit the job to checkmarks and wait for the XML file to come back. So we busy wait for that file to come back, and then we use the checkmarks command line, then we use the ThreadFix command line to submit the results into ThreadFix. So we're able to get good automation around the scanning with checkmarks. It's just something that has to be scripted together a little bit using, in our case, Jenkins and some shell scripts. And again, the hope is that we're going to be moving to a model treating them as a remote provider here pretty soon. Let's see, question about ServiceNow being included in the future. Right now, ServiceNow GRC is the GRC system that we support. We have heard from one or two folks that they are interested in ServiceNow as a ticket management system as well. That's certainly something that we're open to doing. It's probably worth reaching out to us on a ThreadFix contact form or something like that, just to let us know that you're interested in that. And then we could have a conversation with you about, what does that entail, and potentially, finding out from some of your contacts, at ServiceNow or at another vendor, the best route for us to go to get the technical access that we need to be able to, to make that integration. Let's see. Okie dokie. I think, does anybody else have any questions? Great questions so far. I'll stay here all day. I love this stuff. So if you have any questions, let me know. I think we've dried up all the questions. All right. Well, hey, everybody, again, thank you for taking some time today to work through this with us. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm at Daniel Cornell on Twitter, or dan@denimgroup.com. Also, again, on the ThreadFix site, we've got a contact form that you can use to reach out to us as well. Again, please pull down the release candidate, put it through its paces. If you find bugs, let us know via GitHub. If you have any questions or feature requests, again, that can come in through GitHub. We've got a Google group that does the community support. If you're interested in evaluating enterprise, please reach out for that as well. We're always love to transition people from community to enterprise users, but we love our community users as well. So again, thanks everybody for taking the time, and we'll be sending out again some follow-up information from this call or from this webinar, as well as the slides and recording if you want to refer back to that or send it on to a colleague. Thanks a bunch, guys.
All right. On behalf of our speaker, Dan Cornell, as well as the folks at Denim Group, we wish you a good day. Thank you for joining us and taking the time to view this webinar. Thank you.